This is part two of the instructional video on how to get started with project two. And in this video, I'm gonna mostly talk about how to actually create content on StoryMap, which is the tool we're gonna be using for our project. Before we get to that, one thing I didn't mention in part one of the video is the other resource that you have for project two, which is really useful and really interesting if you like history, British History Online. In this website, you'll find materials that are actually historical texts from the period in which they were published. And this will give you some context for how and why people wrote about some of the places that Whitney refers to in her poems. So what you're looking at right here is I already did a search for Watling Street, which is another reference that we saw in the first video at the beginning of Whitney's poem. Now here, I might pause and say, if you're watching this, you might consider that these two examples that I'm bringing up, St. Paul's Churchyard and Watling Street, are already our sample examples. So for your own project, you might challenge yourself to find different locations so that you can do some of this research on your own. Now getting back to this. So when I typed Watling Street, I got a lot of results. What I actually had to do, as you see here, is I had to narrow it down to the time that Whitney was writing. So when I scroll down, you see all of these things that you can narrow: subject, place, and then from period, you can select 16th century and see only things that were published back then. So a lot of these are technical documents, or they might be legal documents, but they will give you a sense of how and why people were writing about these places. So for example, a very first result here, a new history of London including Westminster and Southwark, that's the title of this book, has a chapter on this place called Bread Street Ward. And in the very beginning, it talks about what this area is. The ward of Bread Street is named from its principal street, which was anciently the bread market. For by the records it appears that in 1302, the bakers of London were ordered to sell no bread at their houses, but in the open market. And then I might go ahead and do a Command F to find Watling and see where it's mentioned here. There it is. So Bread Street contained all the way to Watling. So it extends on the south in Watling Street up almost to the house next to St. Augustine's on the south side, etc., etc. We'll see that Watling is actually mentioned 4 times in here. So the places of Bread Street, what streets it intersects, and so on. So from here, as I do my research, I might begin to think, okay, this is an area for commerce, but it's not an area for any kind of commerce. It's specific to selling bread. So what does it mean to Whitney to talk about these people who are there making bread every day? And why is that street a street that she wants to mention? I might look at some of the other examples. So you see all of them where the books are from. A lot of these might be about the actual location and what the street is, and this will give you a sense to of what you want to include for your project about what these streets were in their own time and not just in the present time, which is what you're going to find if you Google something directly. So this will give you historical sources. So these are the 2 sources that we're mostly relying on for this project. Once again, the map of early modern London and British History Online. And what you select from these sources is, of course, up to you and how you frame your project. So once you have your whole project storyboarded with all of the places that you want to mention, we're going to actually go to our tool, which is ArcGIS StoryMaps. This is also linked on Blackboard, storymaps.arcgis.com. We're going to get started, of course, by creating an account. I already have one, excuse me. I already have one here, but you can make a public account on the link at the very bottom. You can also directly link your Google or Facebook if you'd like to do that instead. Once you have your account, you'll be taken to a page that looks like this. Yours will be blank. What you want is this green button over here that says New Story, and it'll give you 2 options. I would not select Start from Scratch. You can select one of these 2. So Sidecar which, as they say here, is an immersive block with stationary media panel and scrolling narrative panel, or guided map tour. Walk your audience through a list of locations sequentially. Both of these, as you can see, are map centered, which is the point of our project. So I'm going to start by showing you Sidecar. All right, so we're going to start with some very straightforward information about what you can do to customize and add information. So you'll see it tells you where to put the title, it tells you where to put your subtitle, and right here it also tells you to add a cover image or video. So we might go back to, say, one of our searches and put Isabella Whitney, just as an example, but you can put whatever you want on there. We're going to make sure to go to Tools, Usage Rights, Creative Commons licenses. See how that changed a lot? So that didn't quite work for us. So in this case, we're going to allow all, but we're going to make sure that we write that these are under fair usage rights. Okay, so let's say I actually want this lovely image of a map of early London, which is super useful. I'll walk through No Woman's Land, reading Isabella Whitney's poetry. Might be something useful for you to read too in your own research. So I'm going to save this image to my computer. I'm also going to save this reference and put it on my storyboard so that I can remember to cite it later. So when I go back here, when I click Add Cover, Image, or Video, you'll see that you'll be able to upload your files. You can also add a link. I'm just going to do this. Go to my folder that has all my project 2. All right, so there it is, add. So this then is the look of my storyboard for now. And I'll walk you through how to change the design of this later. So now the title of your story might be something about your own argument for the specific places that you want to mention for Whitney. I'm going to put something very generic here just to get us started and call it Whitney's London. But you can add a more original title. And then you can have a subtitle here. You don't need it. Now we get to our first slide, as you will, and you see it's all blank, but there's already a button here that says Add Media. And when you select this button, it'll let you add an image or video or add a map. We want a map. So now I have pre-selected maps on here. You won't have one. But what you can do is click on this green button at the top right, New Express Map. This map will auto-load for you directly. It'll give you some basic information on how to use this, so I would recommend having a quick read. And then here's the map. As you see, this is a world map. It's not super useful for us yet, but you will notice there is a search box on the top right where it says Search by Location. So here you can input your search. Notice that this didn't automatically come up with England as its central space, and it's still very general. So it seems like I needed to say St. Paul's Cathedral, and now I have the right address. So make sure you pay special attention when you do this search that you actually get the locale that you are looking for and not just something general. When I click on this, now my map takes me directly to that spot, and I'll be able to add it to my map by clicking Add to Map. Once you do that, as the box instructs, when you search for a location, a point will automatically be dropped and labeled for you, but on the left side, you'll be able to add your own image. So I'm going to go from my images that I already saved and put that on here. And then I'll be able to also change this information here. So here is where I want to have some of my information about this image. So I can say here, this image comes from Penn State Library Collections. I already wrote this in my storyboard. That's why it's so useful to have all this research already made. So I'm ready for this. I'm going to click done. Now you see on this left side, in addition to these layers, you also have this little gear button, and this will let you configure what your map looks like. So I think that this preloaded map is actually very ugly. And so you can select different ones to highlight. And as you click on them, your map will change so you see what look you want. So this is like a satellite kind of look. This one is a little bit flatter. And then there are all the different ones here. So you can select a more colorful map, go through all the different options to see which ones you like. I can also zoom in closer to the area I want if that seems useful. Once I'm ready and I have the zoom where I want and I have the location where I want, I can click done. And now this map is my first slide. And the user will have to hover over the pin on the map to see the information that I've added with the image. And then on here, I can add more annotations about this spot and give all the information that I want about the history of this place. So this is where I'm going to copy my notes and paste them onto here. So when your reader, when your viewer is going through your map, they will look at the actual location, they will look at the actual location, and then on the side, they will read your notes.